The ocean remembers everything. It remembers the battles fought on its waves, the ships that sank into its depths, the whispers of lovers carried across the tides. But most of all, it remembers her song. There was once a mermaid whose voice was said to rival the choirs of heaven itself. A voice that could calm storms, that could make even the coldest sailor weep, that could make the ocean itself pause to listen. Yet like all things touched by beauty, her story did not end in joy. On the darkest night, with the moon hidden by clouds, she sang her last song, a song of love, of loss, of a heart that shattered like sea foam against the rocks. And as her final note faded into silence, the waves carried her memory across generations. Even now, when the sea is calm and the wind is soft, some say you can still hear her voice, gentle, aching, eternal. This is her story. The birth of the siren. Far beneath the waves, deeper than any mortal could dive, lay a kingdom of coral spires and pearl palaces. Here, among the glow of bioluminescent gardens, the mermaid was born. She was unlike the others. While most merfolk were known for their shimmering tails and radiant beauty, she carried something rarer, a voice that made the ocean itself tremble. When she cried as an infant, the whales answered. When she laughed as a child, the dolphins danced. And when she sang, even the sea anemones swayed in rhythm, as though the whole ocean were her orchestra. Her mother whispered, "The sea has given her a gift." But gifts this great come with a price. From the very beginning, she was both cherished and feared. Some called her a blessing, a promise that their kingdom would never fall. Others called her a curse, a voice too powerful for one so fragile. But she was still a child, innocent of the burden her song would carry, the lonely gift. As the years passed, her beauty grew, but so too did her loneliness. The merfolk adored her voice, but none dared to befriend her. Whenever she sang, the crowd would gather. They would cheer, they would weep, they would fall silent in awe. Yet when the song ended, so too did their closeness. She was not seen as a friend, but as a miracle. Not a girl, but a gift. And gifts, as she came to learn, are often kept at a distance. So while the other young mermaids laughed and swam in schools of fish, she drifted apart, always just beyond their reach. She would swim alone to the surface, staring at the human world above, ships sailing, torches glowing, voices carried faintly across the night sky, and in her heart, a longing grew. A longing not for applause, not for worship, but for someone to see her not as a voice, but as a soul. Curiosity in the first encounter. The ocean was vast, yet it could not contain her heart. Every night, when the kingdom of the merfolk slept beneath glowing coral lamps, she would rise, up through the dark waters until the waves kissed the open air. There at the border between sea and sky, she would gaze at the human world. From afar, she saw ships gliding like wooden mountains across the horizon. She heard laughter carried by the wind, faint music drifting from decks, the clatter of tools, the murmur of voices. Voices so different from the watery songs of whales and dolphins. And she envied them. Not their ships, not their fire, but their togetherness. Humans seemed to live surrounded by one another, sharing stories, meals, laughter. The merfolk adored her, but adored her from a distance. Up there on the decks of ships, she imagined belonging. The forbidden fascination. Her mother had warned her. Never go too near the surface. Humans are not like us. Their hearts are greedy, their hands cruel. They will not cherish what they do not understand. But warnings mean little to a lonely heart. And so one evening, when the sea was calm and the moon hung low like a silver coin, she swam closer than ever before. She rested by the side of a ship, her fingers brushing its wooden hull, her ears drinking in the music that echoed above. It was a song, rough, unpolished, but alive. Sailors singing in unison, their voices imperfect but joined together. Her chest ached. She wanted to sing with them. She wanted them to hear her, not as a miracle, not as a curse, but as a companion. So she opened her lips and let a note escape. The note slipped from her lips like a pearl loosed from its shell, small, fragile, yet radiant with power. It rose through the air, mingling with the sailors' crude chorus, weaving itself into their rough harmonies as sunlight weaves through storm clouds. The men froze, their voices faltered. One by one they fell silent, their eyes turning upward, their ears straining against the night. The melody that lingered in the air was no work of man. It was too pure, too aching, too alive. The mermaid's heart pounded. Fear surged within her, but so did something she had never known before. Exhilaration. For the first time in her life, she was not a spectacle watched from afar by her kin, nor a secret treasure hidden beneath the sea. She was simply heard. From above, a lantern swayed on the deck. Its flame bent in the breeze as shadows stretched over wooden planks slick with salt and spray. The sailors muttered in hushed voices. Some whispered of spirits, others crossed themselves in fear. But one among them, one young man with eyes that mirrored the restless ocean, did not retreat. He leaned over the railing, peering into the dark waters. His gaze swept across the shifting waves, searching, not with dread but with wonder. The mermaid's breath caught. No one had ever looked for her before. She almost fled, almost sank into the depths and vanished as her mother had always warned her to do. But loneliness is a current stronger than fear, and it pulled her closer to the ship. Another note escaped her throat unbidden, trembling like a secret yearning to be free. The young man's lips parted. He whispered something she could not hear, carried away by the wind, but she knew. He was speaking to her. To her, not to a miracle or a curse, but to the voice beneath the waves. And in that fragile, fleeting moment she felt seen. The days that followed became a secret ritual. When the moon rose and the ship drifted quiet on calm waters, she would come. At first she kept her distance, singing from the shadows of the waves. The men on deck would hush, listening, their rough hearts trembling like reeds in the wind. But the young man, always the young man, leaned closest, his eyes searching for the face behind the voice. Then slowly she dared to approach nearer. One night, as lanterns swayed low and the sea breathed soft against the hull, she surfaced. Only her eyes broke the surface, glimmering like twin pearls in the moonlight. The young man saw them. He gasped yet did not call out. Instead, he smiled, hesitant as though afraid she might vanish if he moved too suddenly. She sank again, heart hammering, but joy swelled inside her. He had seen her and he had not turned away. Night after night, their wordless exchange continued. A glance, a smile, a song half sung and half answered. The distance between them shrank until at last she dared to let him see her face. When she rose from the water, hair like flowing seaweed, eyes shimmering with the depth of tides, the sailors who happened to glimpse her cried out in terror. "Siren!" they shouted, clutching charms and knives. But the young man, he stilled them with a single gesture. "No," he whispered, as though speaking not to them but to her. "Not a curse." The word reached her ears, carried by the hush of night. Not a curse. Tears stung her eyes, strange in the salt of the sea. For the first time in all her years, someone had named her not as a burden, not as a miracle, but as something gentler, something human. And with that single word, her heart began to belong to him. Night after night, she returned to the place where the ship had sailed. Most nights it was gone, replaced by silence and endless waves. But one night she found it again, the same vessel, its lanterns glowing, its sails catching the moonlight. And there he was, the young sailor. He leaned against the railing, staring into the sea as though searching for something. For her. Her heart fluttered, trembling with both joy and fear. She should have turned away. Her mother's warning still echoed. Humans will not cherish what they do not understand. But his eyes, they were not like the others. They held no greed, no fear, only longing. And so she sang. Her song rose from the water, a melody of hidden yearning. This time she sang not just to be heard, but for him. The crew again stilled, their voices silenced. But the young sailor, he smiled. He pressed his hand to his chest as though to hold her voice within him. He whispered, though she barely caught the words, "Angel of the sea." She wanted to answer, to tell him she was no angel, no illusion. But all she could do was sing. And he listened as though it was the only sound in the world that mattered. In his eyes, she saw what she had always longed for, not worship, not awe, but recognition. For the first time in her life, she felt seen. But fate is cruel. One night, as the ship battled a sudden storm, lightning cracked the sky and waves tore against its sides. The crew fought desperately, but the young sailor was thrown into the raging sea. Without hesitation, she dove through the darkness, cutting through the waves like silver. She found him sinking, limbs heavy, his breath stolen by the sea. She wrapped her arms around him, pulling him upward with every ounce of her strength. Breaking the surface, she held his head above the waves, singing softly a lullaby against the roar of thunder. Her voice calmed him even as his consciousness slipped away. She carried him to the shore, laying him gently upon the sand. His chest rose and fell, shallow but alive. Kneeling beside him, she touched his cheek. Salt water and tears mingled as she whispered, "You will never know me, but you will live." And then, before the dawn could reveal her form, she slipped back into the sea. But it was too late. Her heart was no longer her own. The sailor had become her secret, her song, her longing. She returned to the shore again and again, watching from the waves as he searched the horizon. She saw him ask the villagers about a maiden with a voice of heaven, saw him walk the shoreline at dusk, listening, waiting. He believed she was real, and she knew she could never let him go. Yet with every note she sang for him, she swam further from the safety of her world, deeper into a love that the sea itself forbade. For in loving him, she had already written the first lines of her tragedy. The heart of the sea was restless. She tried to bury her longing in music, the hymns of whales, dolphins, and coral gardens. Yet no melody could quiet the memory of his eyes, his voice, the way his fingers reached for her through the night air. The sea gave her everything except him. Whispers spread. She lingered near the shore, singing songs not of the sea. You are drifting toward ruin. Humans are storms in flesh. But warnings meant nothing now. Desperate, she sought the abyssal trench where legends spoke of a witch older than kingdoms, who bartered in blood and longing. Into the dark she swam, past creatures with too many eyes, jaws gaping too wide. Her glowing scales dimmed, but her will did not. At last, a cavern of bones and lanternfish. The witch awaited, half woman, half shadow, smiling sharp. You seek the world above. The mermaid shivered. I seek him. Always love, always longing, the witch crooned. I can give you legs, let you walk beside your sailor. But the price, your voice. Her heart froze. Without her voice she was nothing. Yet what was song without love to share it with? She nodded. I accept. Then sing for the last time. A song spilled forth so pure that even abyssal beasts wept. Farewell to sea, to waves, to life she knew. The witch caught it in a vial. Agony tore her tail apart, reshaping it into fragile legs. She screamed, but no sound came. When she awoke, waves licked at her feet. The sun warmed her skin for the first time. She was no longer of the sea. She was human, voiceless, fragile, free. But fate is cruel, and the tide was turning. What choice will the silent maiden make when love and destiny collide? Don't miss the next part of her story. Like, share, and subscribe so you won't be swept away by the waves of fate.